Welcome to the Lighthouse. I'm your host, Ryan Hopenhauser, and this is the show for business leaders to unlock their full potential. Together, we're going to explore the tools, strategies, and insights that you can use to navigate the complexities of the entrepreneurial mind, maintain your mental wellness, and elevate your leadership to take your business and your life to the next level. Each episode, we're going to bring you powerful conversations with various leaders across multiple industries who have the mindsets, strategies, and tools that they've used to transform their own journey. So whether you're here to lead your team better, grow your business, or take your life in a completely new direction, this is the show for you. Let's illuminate your path forward. Welcome back to the Lighthouse. Today I am joined by another powerhouse entrepreneur, Jay Soileau. He is the owner of StrongBody Fitness, StrongBody Nutrition, Conquer Me Coaching, as well as Legacy Lead Pros. And he has shown that what it takes to be a leader goes far beyond just the things that you do. It's about who you become. And Jay's story is one of transformation. Just a resilient guy. He's had to battle addiction and overcome a lot of things in his life to get to where he's at today. And success wasn't handed to him. So the mindset shifts, the discipline, the vision that he's had for himself, it's going to be a really great lesson for everyone listening today to really understand what it takes to be a leader in business, how to overcome the mental side of business, and really become that person you need to be for your team, your family, and everyone that you're leading in your life. So welcome to the show, Jay. I'm excited to have you on. I can't wait to hear just everything that you've gone through.
I'm thrilled to be here, Ryan. I appreciate it. I'm glad to see you get the show off the ground. I followed you for a while now on Facebook and social, and you got a lot to offer, man. So excited to be here.
Thank you, man. So where I like to start in this show is really talking about like what got you into entrepreneurship, because I feel like getting into entrepreneurship and getting into a leadership position isn't something that everyone jumps to, and you kind of called to do that type of thing.
Yeah, so it's funny, man. I think people are born that way, right? It's either you have that wiring or you don't. And I've been that way since I could remember. Unfortunately, when I was younger, I was an entrepreneur in the wrong things, right? I got into drugs and different things, but I've always kind of had that hustle mentality. I see problems and I see opportunities maybe differently than some people. And of course, you're the same way, and probably anybody listening to the show. But it's just always been hardwired into me, man. And I think like a lot of my upbringing and just the scarcity and those types of things really helped with that. Of like, hey, I need to get as far away from this pain as possible. And that still drives me to this day of like, I got to go out and get it type of thing. But yeah, man, I just think I'm wired that way. For some people, they see a problem as just this problem and a roadblock. And for me, I just tend to see it like, okay, there's a really good potential here to turn this into something awesome and probably monetize it. So it's a game.
I like that you said like you would just see things differently. Like it's funny. Every person I've had on the show, as you can imagine, says the same thing. We see things differently. You mentioned about, your early upbringing, and I think back to myself being in 8th grade and the first get introduced to smoking weed. And I realized pretty quickly that if I got it just a little bit more, I could sell it to others and I would get mine for free.
Yeah.
Right. And that was just how I figured out how to get things for free. Like it wasn't just thinking differently. And then that slowly, again, it turns to the next thing and the next thing, and the next thing, and you know where that road can go. It all started just with that of like, hey, I wonder if I just did this thing differently, I could probably get this for free. And I feel like if people just thought a little bit like that, not necessarily saying you should go start selling drugs or whatever it is, but
yeah, don't do that, guys.
Yeah, just think differently, and you start to find these answers that open doors to new pathways. And I imagine that's what happened with you getting involved in the entrepreneur world.
It's interesting, man. It's like a lot of entrepreneurship, at least for me and a lot of the guys that I know, comes from insecurity, some level of insecurity, right? It's like either from a very small age, I remember looking around and going, man, like there's not enough, right? So I've got to go figure out how to create more, and there's never going to be enough. So I've always got to do that. That's a lot of it. And then once you start to figure out like, okay, if I do these things that no one else is willing to do, it'll produce a result that no one else has. And for me, it was being 11, 12, 13-year-old kid that was hanging out with all these older kids. They were giving me some sense of like affirmation. And so that just kind of drove it. And I think it's still that way, man. It's like hard charging people. We like recognition. We want to serve others. We want to produce. I don't know. It's just some people have it, some people don't. And I don't really understand how the inner workings of that.
I was watching a video actually from Dan Martell this week, and he said something along the lines of like every entrepreneur that he knows between the ages of like 12 and 18 had something like challenging, major obstacle, like major thing that was formative for them. And I know like for me, that was the same thing, like same thing happened. And I imagine similar to you. And you're right. Like you start to look around and you realize that I don't want to be like that, or I don't want to do that, or I don't want to live like that. And now it's becomes like that game of how do I get away from it? And it's like, if everyone's doing this stuff over here, I should probably do something else.
Right.
So for you, what was that first thing that you got into an entrepreneur role? And you, besides, I guess the first part we talked about, but like when you got into legitimate business, what was the first legitimate business we got involved in for you?
So it was network marketing for me. So short story, kind of short outline of my story is started doing drugs at 10, my whole family is drug addicts, alcoholics. I was surrounded by the stuff. Started smoking pot at 10. Was in fifth grade. I'd done cocaine, meth, ecstasy, all of that by 13. By 16, I had 3 felony drug charges and was sentenced juvenile life. And so went through all of that, ended up getting released at 18. And then at that point decided like, okay, this is not what I want to do anymore. I've got to make some changes, and started to have some level of awakening or awareness that like, it's not my circumstances, right? It's not that I grew up in a poor home or I had all these things. That's not, I can't blame that anymore because I'm 18, I'm an adult now. So what is it? Well, it's my psychology. It's the way that I think. It's the way I perceive the world. It's causing me to show up a certain way and get these results.
Yeah.
So, man, I really needed to change this. And I was on that path, and I picked up a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was the first book I ever really read. I failed my way through school, picked up this book. I'm now like clean. I'm hungry. I realize no one's coming to save me. If I'm going to do anything with my life, I've got to do it. And so I start reading this book, and it's like totally warping my mind.
Yeah.
I'm in a mall, and it's talking all about like, passive income and being an owner and all these things. I'm in a mall, and a lady walks up and she goes, "Hey, I really like that shirt. Where'd you get it? I'd love to get it for my husband." And we started a conversation. Well, she was a network marketer, right? So
it's funny.
So
like
she recruits
synchronicity.
me. Dude, it's crazy. And she's like, she recruits me, and she's like, "Hey, we're looking for some sharp people for our team, and whatever. I'd love to have you talk to my husband." And of course, I'm like, reticular activating system, right? Like I'm looking for the thing that's going to get me where I want to go. And I sit down with this guy, and he's saying all the things, business ownership and all the things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. And I got involved with that company and built a team, and never really made any substantial money, spent a lot, chased people all across the globe. But dude, it got me on a path to personal development that has radically changed my life. And I think we built the Amway business for like 5 years. I mean, getting after it, dude. Like going out in malls every night, randomly striking up conversations like old school. And the amount of rejection, the amount of books and CDs back then, that I went through has been foundational in my growth.
Just an amazing story overall to see, where it started, and just to have that, I guess, insight for you at that age, to know, because I trained athletes for a decade in the gym, and most 18-year-olds don't have that insight to be able to say that I need to change my path, after even the ones that I've worked with that went through some bad circumstances. Unfortunately, they don't always see to change. So it's so awesome that you were able to see that. And like you said, it's all about psychology. Your circumstances are not like your circumstances, you cause those. Like they're just a manifestation of the way that you think, the way that you speak, the way that you see, and they all come to fruition if you believe in it. And you were able to make that decision at a very young age to not believe in that and change it, which is just awesome. And it's just a testament of what was created as a result of it, because like you said, everything changed from there in terms of personal development. And that's where it all starts, is like, fix this, this thing right here. It's like, all right, this thing here.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So, thinking back to that time, what were some of, I would say, the strategies or, leadership skills that you had to develop at a young age, getting involved in that type of business where, you're going out, you're getting rejected, you got to go talk to people, interact with people, you got a team now. What were some of the skills that you thought you had to develop at that time if you think back to it? Yeah,
dude. So it's pretty widespread, but I would say emotional intelligence is a big one. So going from being a victim, the world's against me, poor me, you handle things with anger and brute force, to like, now all of a sudden I've got to delicately navigate a conversation and persuade someone, in a positive way to maybe make a decision. And that was kind of the beginning of what leadership is. And then I got to go in front of this group every week and talk. There's 100 people in there, and I got to go up there and share, hey, I brought Joe as a guest and this person. And so now all of a sudden I'm developing some, some speaking skills, and like having to overcome all of the insecurities of you're not good enough and you're never going to be successful. No one in your family's successful. Like when I'm up in the front of a room of 100 people, or I'm sitting across from one guy and I'm trying to tell him about an opportunity, all that stuff still lives there. Like, Jay, this guy's not going to listen to you. Who are you? You grew up in welfare. You're a drug addict, like all of that. So having to learn, this is the most powerful thing I can say. And I still, to this day, it is the number one tool that I go to, and it's the reframe, right? It's understanding that the stories in my head are only true if I allow them to be true. And most of them that I have kind of replaying, even still to this day, some are things that developed at a very early age with bad information, right? I developed this thought process because of something my mom told me, or because my dad wasn't there, or whatever. And I placed a meaning on that. And then now it's causing me to operate a certain way. So like, it's the reframe. It's going, hey, what's the story that I'm telling myself? What are the facts? And then what's a new story? And then what facts can I find that this new story is, what evidence that this new story can be true? And man, when I work through that, talking about psychology, like I'm able to go from, hey, this is probably not going to work. We talk about starting businesses and all this stuff. This is probably not going to work. I'm probably going to fail. I've never been successful, whatever, right? I don't deserve it. To, hey, there are other people doing this. I have been successful at things and I can name it. If Ryan can do it, then I can probably do it too. Now all of a sudden I'm in a totally different headspace, which leads to action. So it's like, man, the reframe is super powerful.
I talk about that in the Lighthouse Leader program with challenging yourself. Like you got to challenge your story. And it's so interesting you said that. I just had a coaching call yesterday with a client, and he told me, because they were struggling with getting things done with the business, and he had to step in and take over. And he said that no one is ever there for me. And I was like, is that true? And I started naming the people that I know are there and have done a lot of big things in the last few weeks. So is no one? Like, that's a very definitive statement to say no one, or always, or never. We create these stories in our head, and then that story ends up creating an impossible game to win, and then you're stuck because you can't move any direction because you've actually taken away the option. And that's your point. The beautiful thing about the reframe is all of a sudden it's like, this new doorway opens and you're like, oh, I could just walk through that door. Okay, cool. But until you reframe it, you're stuck in that same spot thinking that you're no way out of this. I'm in a hole. There's nothing I can do. The world is out to get me. Beautiful to reframe, because I think that's the most powerful thing that someone can do, is question it.
And it's super simple. It's like, we get what we look for, right? We get what we expect. We've all heard that. And it's true. It's like, if I'm going around saying that no one's there for me, I'm just going to continue to see the fact that no one is there for me. But literally at any point, the guy can say, well, hold on a minute. Let me look at some examples of who's been there for me. And actually, I have a ton of evidence that people are there. And like that, you can change. So it's not a complicated, like you need 10 years of therapy type of thing. It is a skill that has to be developed, because you'll quickly go back to those old ways of thinking, for sure, especially if there's some deep-rooted like trauma and things there.
Well, yeah, because you don't always see it.
It's not complicated. Right.
I think that's the hardest part. Awareness.
To your point about coaching, right? You're doing coaching. Like, I have a coach. I'm sure you have a coach. I've spent literally at this point hundreds of thousands of dollars on different coaches and programs and that type of thing for that reason. Because why I started Conquer Me, like the whole thing about Conquer Me is that I'm my own worst enemy, and it's my limiting beliefs and ways of thinking that I can't see a lot of times that are keeping me from climbing the mountain. So I need you to say, hey, Jay, is that really true? I did a call with a guy the other day. He was wanting us to help him with some lead generation. And as soon as I got on the phone, man, he just started like talking, right? Just like just spilling all of the things. And I'm just sitting there for like 15 minutes listening to the guy. And he gave me 4 or 5 reasons in that whole spiel for why business was hard and it wasn't going to work, and people weren't spending money, and the economy and the politics and the weather and all the things. So he finally finished, and I said, dude, listen, I'll be honest. There's no amount of marketing that we can do to outpace your limiting mindset. You just gave me 5 reasons why it doesn't matter what we do, you can't be successful. So like, I don't even want you to spend the money with me. I'm going to send you a bunch of leads, and you're going to call them with the expectation that they're not going to buy. And guess what's going to happen? They're not going to buy. And I didn't sell the guy anything, but I offered him the opportunity to start reframing that. I said, dude, listen, I can put you on a call right now with 5 other landscapers that are in the same demographic as you. They have the same weather as you. They're under the same presidential administration, and they're running circles around you. So why not you? You know, it's interesting, but it's like people don't have those skills. Not everyone understands that you can choose your stories.
Dude, and that right there is the exact reason why I killed my mastermind and started the leadership coaching, is because I couldn't help the business owner with their marketing or with their systems or with their sales or with their team until I help them. If they can't get out of their own way, then no matter what system I give you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I can give you the best system in the world that automates everything. It does it all for you. But if you think it's bullshit, it's probably going to end up being bullshit for you because you're not going to actually use it. You're not going to follow up with the people accordingly. You're not going to help build it. You're not going to change it and test it. Like, you're not going to do all those things, right? So like, that was the biggest thing I found, is that in working specifically with marketing, sales, and systems, is if you don't actually have the leadership skills and mainly just the ability to lead yourself, it's impossible for me to be able to give you anything for your business. And I think that's the biggest sticking point for people, is they get so hung up on the tactic or on the thing, and they completely miss like the real propulsion device. The real vehicle is yourself. You know, like that's what takes you there. It, like, the new lead gen magnet or new offer, like that's not taking you to your destination. That's not going to get you there. You get yourself there.
But how do you, and this is the challenge, I think, for all of us who are aware of that fact. And frankly, like, I have a podcast too, and we're right at, I think, 80 episodes. And I've gotten frustrated with even just coaching and some of the things that I do in the gym, because it's like, how do you communicate that it's all psychology and really get people to understand that? Because my challenge has always been like, my most successful clients are the ones that go, okay, wait a minute, it's a thinking problem. It's between my ears. It's not all the other things. And they're willing to lean into that and challenge that and look at their language and look at the way, you know, like, that's where the power happens. But so few people are really willing to take extreme ownership. Yeah. You're talking about leadership, right? Like, it starts with, hey, it's all my fault. Like, if I'm here because I got me here. First of all, that level of accountability and ownership is pretty rare. But then even for people that are willing to do that, they start wanting to go take a bunch of action and do a bunch of things. And not understand that, like, man, you've got to realize first that, like, you're enough, you're capable, and no automation or no, you know, new shiny object is going to outweigh you having a deep rooted idea that you don't deserve it.
In terms of how do we get them there, the only ways that I found it, it's really 3 ways. The first would be to use, like, I guess, my own example, or use a very personal story with them, and I take them to the bottom. Like, that's one thing. If there's I guess I would call it my gift, is like, I see you, like, I see who you are intuitively, immediately. And I show you who you are in the best way I can through analogy or through story, but it's usually at a depth that others aren't ready to see yet. But once you see it, you can't not see it. So one of the things that I found for my coach, because that's a very specific instance, because not everyone can do that, but I'll often ask, like, do you want to see? Because once I show you, you can't unsee it. And also, it might not be nice to hear the things I say because they're true. And again, not everyone's willing to even hear that stuff. So it's a very delicate conversation for someone in that. The other way, though, is to almost like it's like, I can't get you through the door, but I can get you to look out the window. So then what can I put out the window that's going to help guide them to the door? You know, it's so interesting to talk about this, because I was just talking about this with a family member recently. Like, it's not what you think. Like, I tried for a very long time. Like, my brother, he struggled with alcoholism for a very long time. And I did everything to try to get him to change and like force him into it, and books and everything. And one day I just happened to mention Joe Rogan, and he started listening to Joe Rogan's podcast. And then he started going into like these different psychologists, and like, my brother's super smart. He's like, he is a genius in the intellectual sense. I like to think of myself as a genius in an intuitive sense. Like, he is pharmacist, knows everything science, right? So he went super deep in that. And then as a result, like, that took him into psilocybin, which then took him into self-reflection, which then took him into sobriety. And he's been sober for 5 years. I never fucking thought Joe Rogan was going to do that, you know?
Right.
Like, that was the window. And I didn't know it was the window. So I think a lot of times when you're trying to help someone is like, we're trying so hard to show them what we see without understanding that they're never going to see that. So we have to show them what they can see. And I think that's the difficulty as a coach is we don't know what it is in the beginning.
Right.
So it's almost like you're searching and you're sifting. And I like to try to speak in stories or analogies to try to find it. Cause like how can I find it where that light bulb clicks in your head that now you see it? And you're right. A lot of people aren't willing to do it. And I think that's the most difficult thing with coaching is when you're dealing with someone who is adamantly refusing to see the truth. And it's like, cause you want so badly to help them. Yeah.
Right. You have to be willing in order for any transformation to take place. You've got to be absolutely raw and open and just willing to admit where you are, right? And look at the good and the bad and see it for what it is, even if it hurts. And without that, you just keep kind of circling back and making excuses and that whole thing. So,
well, I know for me, like similar to what you said, for you at 18, you had to come to this acceptance of where you were and then make a decision to move. And it was a similar situation for me in college. I read the book As a Man Thinketh, and it blew my mind open. Is I realized in reading that, like that was my window. And I was like, oh my God, the way I'm thinking is why I'm so upset. Like all the time. And like, but that was like, so just an insight for anyone listening, that was in 2011, 2010. And I still haven't figured it all out.
Yeah.
And you're 2025, you know what I mean? Like, and I thought I was done with it in 2023. My mind broke open and a whole new thing. Like, and it's just like these different layers that you go through. And again, it's just that willingness. Like that was what really got me there was the raw acceptance of the truth of what I was and who I was and why I was that way. I'd say like, if you can learn to understand your past, you will be able to accept your present. And when you accept your present, you can open a new door to a new future. If no one does that pathway, like if you don't do the first two steps, you're never going to change the door. You're still walking through the same door over and over again. And you can apply it to anything. Same relationship, same business model, same catastrophe, like same argument. But it just repeats and it repeats. And it's so unfortunate because you're right. Like if you just looked at the truth of it, but it's hard. It's really, really fucking hard.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know how we got that far down that hole, but we're there.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Thinking of that, like what was some of the things that got you to that place of understanding psychology as you further went down the road in leadership and entrepreneurship? I know in the beginning what really did it, but like, again, there's layers. What kept you peeling those layers?
Yeah. So it's funny. You mentioned psilocybin. So that was part of it. That was been one piece of it was, I use recreationally as a kid, right? And it was fun just to eat mushrooms and run around town and cause trouble. But eventually I started to figure out like, okay, this is a very therapeutic medicine and there's potential here for someone like me who is still, although had all the knowledge and read all the books, was still eating shit and couldn't figure out how to get my life in order, right? So it's like, there's still a disconnect here. And I start to figure out, well, it's just things that are deep down inside that I don't know how to deal with. Like, there's not a book that can really tell me, like, I've got to learn how to look inside and how do I do that? And so I went down the rabbit hole of like looking at different types of, therapeutics and medicines and like therapy, all the things, right?
Yeah.
And of course came back to psilocybin and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to approach this differently with a different level of respect and a different kind of outlook and really different outcome or desire for a different outcome. Instead of getting high and laughing and colors, like I'm going to try to go deal with the darkness.
Yep.
And so did a lot of that over the years of like big doses, small doses, everything in between. And that really just peeled back another layer, and then it's really raw right there, raw meat. And then I got to deal with that. And then I peel back another layer. But it's been another big thing is seeing my patterns in other people, right? I started the gym. So like I got my life together, it made some progress. And then later on got addicted to Adderall and that completely destroyed me. And so it was like, man, I've read all these books. I've been involved in business. I shouldn't be doing this again. Like, why am I doing this again? And so got clean from Adderall, started a gym, And then I started seeing a lot of my patterns in other people. And I'm like, man, wait a minute.
Yep.
Like, it's not just me. I could predictably see what their outcomes would be based on how they talked,
Yes.
based on how they showed up. And so I'm like, wait a minute. If there's patterns in them, there's probably patterns with me. And what are those? And so being able to see them as a mirror
Yeah.
helped
The
me
mirror.
go, well, maybe my self-talk's not right. Maybe I'm not really fully accepting responsibility, And so that was huge for me, just like coaching other people, telling people, really, we coach on what we need, right? Like just kind of instinctively, however that
Yeah. Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
But once it clicked and I'm like, okay, I'm helping these people in a big way by exposing these things to them, letting them take some necessary steps, but it's also exposing me and it's allowing me to see me better. So
Yeah, dude.
coaching others was a big part of that.
I love you said that coaching others and coaching me is because I catch myself all the time in a coaching session. Like, just so you know, right now I'm talking to me too.
Right. That's right.
I'm saying this.
That's happening.
But yeah, man, like I think that's another great, like if there's something that anyone listening can utilize as a tool is the mirror. Like what you judge outside yourself is often what you judge inside yourself against yourself.
Yeah.
Like guilt is anger turned inwards.
Yeah.
So if you can look at others and see, like if you catch yourself of constantly judging this certain type of person, it's probably because they're exhibiting some pattern of behavior that you either used to exhibit or still exhibit and you're not happy about.
Yeah.
And like Jay said, like it's all patterns. Like, Tony Robbins talks a lot about positive patterns in your life. What's your patterns you're creating? There's negative patterns too. And they start here. Yep. And again, and that's a problem with it is we don't know it's happening. Like you can't necessarily catch it, which is why it's helpful to have someone with outside eyes, a coach, or even a partner, if you got in a relationship who can be able to have that conversation with you and say like, hey, did you notice that every time this happens, this is how you respond?
Yeah.
Because again, like if you change that pattern, so every time you lose a client in your business, you don't go down to the self-sabotaging rabbit hole. Right. Instead, you go into a production.
Yeah.
That can be the difference between breaking your business every 6 months and building your business twice as big every 6 months. And if just someone could just catch that little piece. But again, it's so hard to see it when you're in it.
Yeah. And I'll add this. So I think a big game changer for me has been just the willingness to tell the truth, right? And to really accept things even when it hurts. And to a point of like where it's just radical. Like I am going to face this and see this and no matter what, tell the truth.
Yes.
Even if it hurts, even if it's going to hurt people. I mean, it has to be relevant. Like, don't go out and, intentionally. But I'm saying, like, when it comes to your...
Have you ever studied... Sorry to interrupt you. Have you ever studied Wake Up Warrior stuff?
Yes.
That's where I remember Garrett J. White. You're a fucking liar. You're a
I love
liar.
it, man. I love it. And I adopt that mindset. And seriously, that stuff replays all the time. And it's like, I don't give a shit where you grew up. I don't care about what your circumstances are.
Yeah.
You're broke because you have poor spending and saving, money management habits. It's not the government. It's not the economy. What if we just said, hey, you know what? Like, I can't blame anything but me. Mm-hmm. And I know this sounds like we've all heard this. We've got the Goggins and we've got the Garrett Whites. But seriously, like, that's the fundamental piece is like, no matter what, I'm just not going to lie about this. I'm not going to point my finger at anybody. I'm not going to make any justifications. I'm in the position I'm in because I've allowed myself to be there.
You kept saying the truth. I kept thinking Wake Up Warrior because that was such a big turning point for me. Yep. In 2016, I was working with a coach who was the lead coach in Wake Up Warrior, and I got to go to Warrior Con, and I'll never forget the very first thing. Garrett J. White comes out on stage. The room is black, and you're all a liar. And it was all about telling the truth. And I never just talking about like fear of being in an event like pitch black room, and if you know Sam from there, he's up there with a flashlight. And he's calling people out in the room. They stand up. Why are you here? And if they didn't answer fast enough, get the out of the room. Like, because you couldn't tell me truthfully. Like, and because what it got to is you're here because of your behavior. Like, and which was a lot meaner in there. It was like, you're here because you're behaving like a piece of shit. and you're an alcoholic and you're cheating on your, like, that's why you're here.
Well, that's
And
his
again,
whole message is if you're sedating, so everybody there is sedating. Everybody there is not showing up like they want to show up, you know?
So for me as a 20-something-year-old male surrounded in a room with 40 and 50 and 60-year-old guys, I got to see, like we talked about in the beginning, very clearly where I didn't want to be.
Yeah.
And like, I'm so grateful for that opportunity to learn. And I was probably one of the youngest people in the room at that time. Awesome. And I got to learn about that stuff and that mindset and way of thinking. And like that blew my mind. I never thought about that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anyone ever taught us that growing up, you know? So like that right there completely changed the way you started to see things. And like you said, like, I started telling the truth and radical truth, which is I like to have fun with it. Like, if I'm not having a bad day and someone's like, how are you? I'm bad. I'm not having a good day.
Right.
I'm not going to answer you and say, I'm fine. Fine.
Right.
Good.
Yeah.
No. And it's funny because that's actually how my wife, had a thing in high school. And when we saw each other for the first time after college and after I'd come back home and had my first or second breakdown of my life, whatever, she saw me on the street and I was drunk and she was like, hey, how's everything going? And I was like, fucking horrible.
No.
And just spilled the honest truth. And this was just me being a jerk. Probably I didn't know at the time I was supposed to do that. Right. But we went on a date the next day. We've been together ever since.
That's insane, man.
And I told the truth. And honestly, you know, what's so funny is if you ask her about that and why we went on that date, it was because I told the truth.
Yeah.
And it was so different than anything she'd ever experienced. And granted, we had a history, so obviously there's all of that there. It's not like a stranger.
So there's the relevance. So to be clear, guys, if you're listening to this, we're not saying go out and just like, if you see a fat person, go, hey, why are you fat?
No.
It needs to be relevant, right? Like, do it within the relevant setting and with people that, you know, it makes sense. And there's context to this, but
and most importantly, it starts with you.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like a lot of times, especially in business, that the individual is in a leadership position who is pushing to get to a point where you become afraid of pushing. Yeah. And it might be because you're worried about something, the way you behave, the way you did something, like there's some sort of thing that you're afraid of. And the curious thing about that is you're afraid of that thing being true, which is why you're not acting. But if you just accepted that thing to be true and move past it, it wouldn't matter. Right. So being radically true with yourself and like, I have not been performing the way I should be as a leader. I've been a leader. Like, I haven't been showing up for my people like I have been. I haven't been hopping on team meetings. I haven't been giving accountability. I haven't been leading from the front. I've been hiding in the back. Like, that type of raw honesty with yourself is what moves you to the next stage. Because once you accept where you're at, now you can go do something about it. So to Jay's point, don't go and just honestly tell people what you think about them because you don't like them.
Starts with you, right?
You must first be honest with yourself in order to be honest with others.
But to your point, and I love this. So guys, if we can get to a place, and this is kind of the meat of this, but if you can get to a place where you can be just brutally honest, you know, for lack of a better term, with yourself, then you can go and be vulnerable, which is a leadership hack, right? If you can then go to your team and say, hey, I had this conversation with myself and it was, I'm really not giving you guys the leadership that you deserve. I'm hiding in the back. I'm not meeting with you one-on-one. I'm not doing these things. And I'm committed. First of all, I'm acknowledging the fact I've been a really terrible leader. You guys probably already know. I'm sure you've noticed, right? But it's my desire to change that and to take some accountability here and to acknowledge it openly and publicly with you guys. Then all of a sudden they have permission. And they almost feel obligated to go, well, hey, I know, Jay, like, okay, I don't disagree with you. You haven't been the best, but there's some things I could have done better too. And then all of a sudden you've got some traction. But again, it starts with, hey, I've just got to acknowledge the truth, be open about the truth, share the truth. And then that opens the doors. So, yeah.
And I mean, just as a testament to that, like before I had sold my gym, I sat down with my whole leadership team and explained to them my whole mental state and what was going on, how I had been letting them down, what I was going to be doing to change it, and the support that I needed going forward or was requesting for them. And that conversation was probably one of the most powerful conversations I ever had with a team because that connected us on a level deeper than anything else. And they opened up and they were so grateful for me sharing, because a lot of people struggle with the same type of things.
Right.
As much as you might think you're special, we all struggle with these type of things. And like that level of humility opened the doors to conversations that I never knew needed to be had. And I think, again, like just having that willingness to say like, hey, this is what I've been doing wrong and here's how I'm going to be to fix it. Because I think that there's like the one thing people really hate is a liar.
Yeah.
So for you to sit up there and say, hey, I'm doing amazing and I'm doing this, this, and this, but then you go behind the scenes and you don't do that. Like, and I'll never forget in 2017, I told my whole team we were going backwards in business. We needed to push super hard. We're running all these programs. We needed all hands on deck. And then I went to Europe for 10 days with my brother. Like,
hey, bro, it makes sense if you don't think about it, right?
When the words don't align with the actions, there's a very big incongruency, and people see that. And I think, again, like it creates lack of trust. And if there's no trust, it's very difficult to get anyone to do anything on the same page. Now that we're talking about lack of trust, one of the things that I like to bring us back to with this is some of the misconceptions around leadership, right? You know, because I feel like some of the people listening, and we just talked about being vulnerable and sharing quote unquote bad things about yourself. You might have been told before, never do that, never show weakness or anything, you know. So I'm just curious, was there any misconceptions in leadership that you had growing up or in your first jobs or leadership roles that you had to overcome and change?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is that I had to have it all figured out, right?
Yeah.
Like as a leader, I remember like the first time I ever hired someone, it's like, man, I've got to have all this, and you have all the imposter syndrome, right? I don't really know, but I have to know, because if I don't know, I'm going to lose credibility. And if I lose credibility, they're not going to listen to me. And if they don't listen to me, then, you know, the whole thing. And as a young leader, like you can drive yourself nuts with that because you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to know. And so now, like, it's really a freedom for me to walk in and be like, hey, I acknowledge the fact that I'm probably the least smartest person in the room in terms of different categories, right? Like you're probably a better trainer than me at my gym, and you know way more about our technology than I know. And you know, like, hey, I'm just here to like give maybe a little insight, but I'm aware of the fact that I don't have it all figured out. And it's okay. And the team's cool with it, and we can go figure it out together. But for years, man, and it was part of just being insecure too, and feeling like I wasn't good enough and all the things of like, I did the like, yeah, I've got to be the hard charging out front. Like I've got all the answers, and people know, man, you make a couple mistakes and you don't own up, because the guy that thinks he has to always have it figured out will never own his mistakes. He'll always blame, well, this happened, you know, I made that mistake because of this person or that person.
Yep.
But man, it's like I started sharing. I remember one time, major breakthrough for me. I was working with a coach, and he's like, dude, you have a lot of potential, but like, you can't get out of your own way. Like you got to get rid of some of the things from your past. He says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go on Facebook, and I want you to tell everybody what's wrong with you. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I want you to do a Facebook Live, and I want you to tell your story. Like all the things, the dark, deep secrets of your childhood that you probably not talked much about. I want you to do it on Facebook. And of course, it took me a while to like get the boss to do this. But I did, man. It was like a 40-minute video. And I went on, I said, hey guys, I've never done this before, but I really feel like this could be a catalyst for me to move on to the next level of my life if I just let some of this darkness out. And I'm just going to share my story. And I cried and I did the whole thing. And looking back, it was kind of nuts to do that. But dude, the amount of messages, 2 people were suicidal that messaged me and was like, dude, you like, I really have been considering this. So many people dealing with addiction that you would never know.
Oh, yeah.
It was mind blowing, dude. For weeks, I got messages and messages and messages. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. So wait a minute. Not only is it okay not to be perfect, it's kind of a superpower.
Oh yeah.
Like it kind of puts you in a position to win if you can just raise your hand and be the first one to be like, nope, can't hurt me. I already know I'm screwed up.
Yeah, man.
You start admitting that. So that, like, I just see any leader that I respect is going to be one that they do their due diligence in the back end to learn and grow and have things figured out.
Yep.
But they lead with vulnerability and humility and going, hey guys, I might screw this up, but I really appreciate the fact that you trust me here. I'm so grateful to have a great team that can back me up. totally
Yeah.
different frame than follow me because we're going to take the mountain. It's just different
And
style, but
even from a client perspective, like when you told that story, I thought of something to just to wrap this back into business, because I know a fear for a lot of business owners. Again, like if you share that, what if I lose business because someone doesn't want to work with me because of X,
yeah.
Y, and Z? There's two pieces to this. So one, I owned a gym. I had a program called Take Back Your Life that was built off of me. It was how I took back my life the first time, which was physically. I was very unhappy as a teenager, overweight, dealt with a lot of stuff mentally. I realized I changed my body. It started to change my mind. So I had this program, Take Back Your Life, and I would tell my story in the emails. The opening emails, I would tell the whole story vulnerable. Like I didn't go to the school for the first 10 years of my life because I was too afraid. Like the first day of school, I'd be sick every week. And fast forward down the road, we started to advance in business and we changed things and we changed our emails and all that stuff. But then things slowed down.
Mm.
And I was like, what's different? I stopped telling my story.
Yeah.
My story came out. And when I put the story back in, things started to move forward again. They started to pick up. And to your point, I can't even count. I could go back and find it, but I'm talking hundreds of responses to those emails. I mean, we ran that program for over a decade. Like we're talking thousands and thousands of people that came through that. And the stuff that they would say, and more importantly, not what they would say about themselves, but the gratitude they had for me sharing it was eye-opening from a business standpoint. That like, wow, you cared about that? That you wanted me to hear, and even just this last year when I shared everything of what happened to me in 2023 and everything I went through, the number of people that reached out, and I don't know if it's the algorithm, but my most popular Facebook posts are the ones where I share my problem.
It's all pain, man. I know. It's interesting. It's like you don't want to be that guy that's always like, oh, everything's terrible, like whatever. But also it's very important, man. And like that's what keeps me coming back to coaching. Like I keep trying to get away from coaching. I'm like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't know. I just want to go. But seriously, like I keep coming back because just the transformation that people make, I don't want to tell my story anymore. I'm tired of telling my story, right? I've heard myself tell my story over and over. I'm over it. I don't really want to talk about it. But when I do talk about it, people's lives get changed. People open up. They start to reach out. And always, man, I go back. I'm like, okay, we're supposed to do this. Like our story is our story for a reason. It's because it resonates with someone else, and we're supposed to tell it.
Well, and I think and I don't have these exact words, but I wrote this to myself because I've been thinking a lot about these things in the last year, and I think it's like the purpose is finding meaning in suffering. And once we find meaning in suffering, we find fulfillment and joy in sharing it. So looking at our lives, I'm sure you can probably connect dots between things that you did to help others and the suffering you experienced. Yeah. And that's what came to me when I finally ripped the Band-Aid off to make this transition. Like that's what it was. It was like I started my gym to help others deal with the pain that I dealt with as a teenager.
100%. Yep.
And I got into coaching business to help others deal with the pain I felt as a business owner, not knowing what to do and struggling financially. So it makes perfect sense for me to get into coaching leadership or leadership psychology or whatever you want to call it,
right,
to help others deal with the pain that I dealt with for so long mentally.
Yep.
It took, and it's like for each one of those things, it's like it took me X amount of time to figure out me and then figure out how to get out of it or quote unquote, fix it and then, or heal it, I would say, and then put together a plan that others could follow. Yeah. And I feel like that's the entrepreneurial journey over and over again, is you just keep doing that. You save yourself, save others, save yourself, save others. And if you do that, you're fulfilled because you're always in alignment with what you want to do. At least that's my experience. I don't know if you felt that same way.
I would totally agree. And if you're a person that's not easily satisfied with where you're at, you're always going to be putting yourself in a bad spot, so to speak, or in a tough resistance. Garrett calls it the pit. You're always going to be in the pit. You're a pit walker because you're always pushing up against the threshold of your comfort zone, right? Like I'm always trying to ride that line. I want to be out just outside of that. I'm trying new things. I'm approaching new ideas, and all of that is like really uncomfortable. And so we're constantly having to face it, overcome it, and then teach it. which is really cool. And
Learn it, live it, teach it. Learn it,
that's
live it,
it,
teach it,
man.
right?
That's it.
I know it sounds so simple, but it is really hard.
Yeah, it is.
But at the same time, I think probably one of the most valuable things that you could do. As we wrap up for today, one of the things I like to ask about is, like, I call this show the Lighthouse, because I think that analogy is pretty fitting for a leader, that, you know, you're always standing tall, shining a light, guiding others, not necessarily jumping in the water to save them, but you're showing them the way. And I feel like for each of us, there's been something or someone that's been there like a lighthouse throughout our whole life. Has there been something for you, whether it's a tool, a book, a resource, a person that you've been able to lean on that you would say is that lighthouse pillar in your life?
There's been a lot along the way. I mean, just instinctively, the first thing that comes up is a good friend of mine that's in Louisiana, which is where I'm from. And when I was in the middle of my mess and was in a facility, he came in, and very similar story to mine. Been, addiction, gotten a lot of legal trouble, whatever. He's a few years older than me.
Yeah.
And he came in and he started kind of mentoring me. Like, he would look for most of those guys in that program, man, they were, 16, 17. They were going to be right back in prison, like no plans to change. And I was in a different position. I really wanted to take my life back and to do something differently, and not go down that path that my family and friends were still going down. And so I was hungry, right? And so he showed up at this facility. It was like a halfway house type thing for juveniles. And him and I connected, and he started bringing me to NA meetings. And I started getting involved in the 12-step program. And I graduated from that facility, was released at 18, and he invited me to move in with him, which was in a different part of the state that I was from. So this allowed me to not go back home.
Yep.
I could stay like 3 hours north, which I had to do.
Yeah.
So I moved in with the guy, and man, he was just like, so he got me into fitness, which as you know, has been a huge catalyst for everything that, any progress that I make. It's kind of like, I look back at fitness is the catalyst for that. So he got me involved in fitness. He's still a good friend today, but had it not been for someone like him that was willing to say, hey man, your life's been really tough, but like, you're capable of more. Like, you might not even see it, but I see something in you that you don't see in you.
Yeah.
He let me nurture that. Like, come live with me. He helped me get a job. He helped me get on my feet. And so I'll be forever grateful for him. So Joe, if you hear this, shout out, buddy.
That's an amazing story. And I think it's a great representation of mentorship and coaching. It's
100%.
like so many times people ask like, oh, what does it mean to be a coach or a consultant or a mentor? And I think like at the core of it, it's like, I'm pulling out of you what you can't see. Like, I'm pulling that ability out that you don't see it yet and showing it to you.
Yeah. It's everything we just talked about. I mean, the dude came in and he said, hey man, I'm probably more screwed up than you. I've already been down this path. I made a lot of crazy mistakes, so I don't have it perfect, but I might be able to help you. And then I went, oh my gosh, like, this dude's willing to be that open. Like, he told me about the time that he got hammered and went and did this crazy thing. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I could share the thing that I did that I've never shared before. Now, all of a sudden, I'm unlocking some of these things because I'm exposing it. I'm letting it out in the light. And then I got to witness him make mistakes. Yeah. And I had like this new respect for him because he would get back up and say, hey, I made a mistake. I screwed it up. Like, and so it's the same in business. What he modeled for me is the same thing that we do in business. Yep. It's what you're teaching. It all is relevant, whether it's business or life or whatever.
He gave Jay, or I guess the version of Jay that needed a voice that didn't have one.
Yeah.
Essentially is what it is. One of the things, and I'm just curious if this lands with you, since you've gone through your own journey, both mentally, physically, and everything. Like, my thesis for everything that I've been working on for the last year is like if you want to solve this up here, I think there's 3 things that can be done. And number 1 is to let your child out and play with them, because if you don't, they will forever try to keep you locked inside. Right. Number 2 is to find your shadow and tell them you love them. Because if you don't stop to tell them that, they'll never stop chasing you. And number 3 is to find the monster that you created to protect you and befriend them. Because if you don't, they will grow and destroy you.
That's great, man. Yeah, that's good.
And I think that agree. Like, if I could go through like what I did for myself psychological over the last 2 years, that's what it is. And I know that probably, like, if you're listening to this, it probably makes no sense to some of you. No. Once you get into that world and you know that, like, I think that's the answer. And again, it's like going back to what we talked about. How do you show someone that? Because not everyone wants to talk about psychology. Not everyone wants to see that, or they don't want to think about that stuff. And it's because it's also difficult. It's not easy.
No, and it's hard to put it in a container, right? It's like, mindset or energy, or like, what is it exactly? Like, how do you even quantify it or describe it? And your way of experiencing that and communicating that's beautiful, right? That's your truth, and that it resonates a lot with me. For someone else, it'll be something else.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, you mentioned energy and like what it connects with. I just saw a funny post. I got to find it again, because it's like y'all out there 100% believe in Wi-Fi and that it sends things through the air to each other. But I tried telling you that your energy is creating problems in your life, and you give off energy and frequencies, right, and you think that I'm full of shit.
Yeah. Well, then you add religion and you add spirituality and you add all that into it too. And it gets complex. But I think, again, the foundation, no matter what, of all of that can be your, accepting responsibility and starting with you. Like, that's leadership. That's the foundation of leadership.
And that's where I don't want to go too far down the off track, but like, right, in this journey, I've also come to a deeper understanding myself with religion. And as someone I would probably claim to be an atheist previously, I feel like I have a pretty clear understanding of spirituality now. And I think it's all the same. And to your point, like, they all talk about the same thing: better yourself, listen to yourself, learn yourself. No matter what religion you look into, it doesn't matter. They're all going to tell you that at the face of it, the same thing is to learn about you, improve you, and as a result, you will improve others and do to others as you do to yourself. It's in the simplest form is what we're talking about here. It's leading yourself and leading others, and that's what happens. Yeah. And you can get into all the different containers of religion with that, but I think at its core of it, in a very simplistic sense, ultimately that's what we're doing. Yeah. Self-actualization.
And I'll say too, and I know let's wrap up, but there can be some, which I'm sure you offer to your clients and the people that you work with, whether it be in business or personally or whatever, but there can be some buckets, right? Like when it comes to leadership and it comes to leading yourself. And, there's obviously, like, you need to take care of your health, your body, right? Like, you got to have some level of fitness. That's leadership. If you're a slob and you can't, stay awake and you have no energy because you're, whatever, like, you're not leading in that area. There's family, there's a connection with whatever it is that you call, God or whatever that is for you. So, like, I think it is helpful to have an idea of what those buckets are and be giving them some attention, right? I see people that lead themselves in the area of fitness, but the rest of their life is they can't stay, committed to their spouse.
Yeah.
Or they have the best marriage in the world, but they're a slob. Or, so like there's some areas that you can kind of nail down and go, hey, I want to give some attention to these different areas, which will make you a more holistic leader.
Yeah, 100% focusing in on all those different areas and not just all in one area. And again, just because you're missing out in one aspect doesn't mean you're missing out in every other aspect.
That's right.
And the goal is ultimately bringing yourself up to the most balanced leader that you can be for everyone that's in your life, and I think most importantly, starting with yourself. Because if we don't take care of that, then everything else downstream is going to be more difficult to change.
Good, man.
Dude, so good today, man.
Appreciate it, man. I've enjoyed it.
Where can everyone find you? Anyone that's listening, where can they find Jay?
Yeah, so best way, I'm most active on Facebook, and it's just my name, Jay, and then Soileau, Soileau. Same on Instagram. I have a podcast called Conquer Me, a coaching program called Conquer Me Coaching, and then a marketing company that I'm starting to create more content and kind of move into that lane, so you can find me there on YouTube. But anyway, I've enjoyed it, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on. And for everyone listening, make sure to tune in to the next episode of The Lighthouse. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to the show. And if you are a small business owner and you are ready to unlock your true leadership potential, scale your profits, and build a business that actually thrives without you, here are 3 ways that I can help. Number 1, take the What Type of Leader Are You quiz. I'll leave it in the show notes. It's going to give you some great insights into the patterns that are basically running your leadership style and negatively impacting you and your team. The second way is the Lighthouse Leader Program. This is a intensive program for you to develop your leadership skills, remove the mental blocks that have been holding you back, and take you and your business to the next level. If you want to learn more about it, find me on Instagram, ryan.lighthouse. Shoot me a DM that says Lighthouse Leader and we can talk details. And finally, the last way would be to work with me privately. I do mentor small business owners and their teams to grow their business and remove the owner from the day-to-day operations. And if you want to learn how to do that, same thing. Go on Instagram, find me ryan.lighthouse, send me a DM that says mentorship. We can talk about the details of one-on-one mentorship and how I can come in and help work with you and your team. But thank you again for listening to this show, and stay tuned for next episode.